what year were you born and where were you born? And yeah, just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm wondering I might be a special case because I was born in the States,
Oh, okay.
but my parents were living there for school, and then they brought me back to
Oh,
Taiwan
nice.
when I was like less than a year old. So I have no memories of the States.
Oh, okay. So,
And that
what
was,
would,
1992.
oh, 1992. Cool.
Yeah.
So what would you say is like the earliest memory that you have of your childhood?
This is a good question. I I don't know. I think there are a lot of memories that I had that was probably just like with people
Mm-hmm.
that I know. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not like a complete memory that we have these days, but more like, oh, I remember playing with this person. I remember like hanging out in this place.
Mm. And so when you say that you remember hanging out with certain people, what would you say, like, were these classmates? Were they your siblings, your family members?
I think I wouldn't say they're classmates because I think my memory started before that, but it would either be like at home, perhaps, with my brother. I have a younger brother, or with family members. Our family is quite close, and we all, for North American standards, live pretty close to each other. So we kind of grew up together. I want to say, yeah, and then I think whenever we like, if my first memory would have been at some place, it would be with my family as
Okay,
well.
nice. So you mentioned you have a younger brother. What role would you say he played in your childhood and growing up?
Um, well, I think the role that I will tell you is very different from the role that he will tell you about how we interact.
Uh-huh.
But I think my brother, when I was growing up, he's very much like, for me at least, he's a very supportive character in
Mm-hmm.
the way that I get to decide what things I do, and then he tags along. So supportive, not as in like, not as in like emotionally supportive, but more like he's just like on the
Uh-huh.
side. And I guess this is the good thing, I think, having a sibling is that having a younger sibling is that you just assume they're just going to be up for whatever you want to.
Definitely. um,
Yeah.
as far as your relationship with your family, what would you say, what kind of conversations would you have at home, or how was your interactions with your family as a whole at home?
Um, I I want to say my personal experience has been overly positive.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people might have a difficult relationship with their parents, especially if you're, interviewing people in Taiwan. I think specifically me and my mom, we've been really, really close. Um, Me and my dad are a little bit, we're still very on very good terms, but I think he learned how to parent from his dad, which
Mm-hmm.
is, it's always stricter, the more generation you go back.
Yeah.
So sometimes we would clash, and also I think it's because our personalities are a little bit too similar.
Mm,
Whereas like my mom and I think we're on really, really good terms.
I see. Nice. Um, so what did your family do for a living when you were living back in Taiwan? Like, what was their occupation, if any?
Um, my dad was always he like goes to work in companies like he was in the phone like the making of the phone, but like phone company business for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he switched around, but it was always around like the same like tech based companies. And then my mom is a homemaker; she stays home.
I see. Nice. Let's see. So, as far as being at home, what languages would you speak normally at home with your family?
So my family, both of my parents actually come from mainlander background.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's something that you talk about in Taiwanese studies, but
Mm-hmm.
their lingua franca would be Mandarin. So
Okay.
my family speak Mandarin at home. I was sent to learn English since I was really young.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew English when I was really young, but we still like the language at home would be Mandarin. My Taiwanese is not great, but my parents speak Taiwanese with their friends. We just don't speak it out.
Okay, I see. And I know you mentioned that you said you moved to Canada when you were 5. years old?
Sorry, no, I moved to Canada 5 years ago.
Oh,
Not when I
five
was
years
like,
ago. Okay, okay.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
tell me a little bit about that. Like, what was your experience with like moving from one place to the next?
Yeah, I think Canada, because I've also studied abroad before. I went on like a exchange in high school. So Canada, in comparison, is actually one of the easier experience. That's pretty, you kind of like get here and then you kind of just go along with it, especially if you're already speaking English. So that was not as hard for me. I think the hardest part of moving away is to be far away from family. Because I moved around a year before COVID. So I think COVID also made it very obvious about how far you are from home. Other than that, I don't think there's much like culture shock. Obviously, I still
Yeah.
say like, oh, people don't do this back in Taiwan a lot, but like I would say like compared to a lot of other countries, Canada is like pretty easy to get into.
Okay, so going back to your time in Taiwan, what would you say a normal day would look like for you at the age of like 10 years old? Like just
10
a
years
normal
old?
day for
Okay.
you.
Well, it depends on if you're asking a weekday or a weekend.
You could tell me both.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So a weekday, 10-year-old would be when I was in third grade, I think, in Taiwan. So like we wake up. I am I'm not a morning person. I wasn't a morning person. I've never been. So I think my mom specifically takes a while waking me up. Sometimes when we were even younger, she would put us in uniform going to sleep. So it saves more time waking up. When I wake up, I take a while, and then usually at 10-year-old, I think it would be homemade breakfast. Like my mom would have breakfast for us. We eat the breakfast, and then my brother and I we go to the same school. So she would take us to school. The school is about. So now that I'm grown up, I'm like, wow, it's actually not far at all. It's about like 15-minute walk. But I think she would take us to school every single day, like on her motorbike. So I'm on the back, and my brother's in the front with a motorbike. We go to school. School usually lasts from, I don't know, like maybe 8:39 to like 4:30 for elementary school in Taiwan. The schools are, honestly, I can't remember what I did in school, but they have these like different lessons. You go to school, sometimes science, English, whatever. I didn't pay attention to what I was doing at school, but this is when I would like hang out with classmates. Class in Taiwan elementary school is about 40 minutes long, and then you get a 10-minute break. So you do that, and then you have lunch at 12. You have like half an hour, I think, for lunch, and then you get like 20 minutes for like nap time, which is like quiet hours. You don't have to fall asleep, but you're not supposed to talk during that time. And then you continue for another 3 or 4 hours. In the afternoon, I would wait for my mom to pick me up because in my head, she made it sound like it was really far, even though now I'm like, oh, it's only a 15-minute walk. So she would come to pick me up. Sometimes she would be a bit delayed because of, she's a housewife, so she has to do a lot of things. And, as a kid, I didn't really understand. I was like, I don't know why you're always late. But usually I'm the last one to be picked up, but there's no one to really supervise us. Like I'm kind of just like sitting around. Sometimes I'll have a book or like I just walk around waiting to be picked up. I get picked up, and then depending on what day of the week it is, usually sometimes I have the English school after class. The English class usually are like 2 hours. So sometimes we like really quickly eat dinner in the car or at home. We don't really eat out as a family, which is really rare for people in Taiwan. Like usually people eat all the time. We were like, have food in the car, and then my mom would drop me off in English class for like 2 hours. And then I can't quite remember. I guess she picked us up, and then we go home and we have like proper dinner, watch some TV, do some homework, and we get ready for bed.
Nice. So what would you say would be some of your favorite places to be in Taiwan as a child, just growing up? What are some of your favorite spots that you could remember?
Right. Let me think. I think I don't want to say I'm a really homey person at the time because I
Mm-hmm.
think at that age you kind of just you always want to go out and you want to
Mm-hmm.
meet with your friends. And I think my favorite place will change depending on what age I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now when I think about, oh, I like that place, it might not have been the favorite place of myself at the time.
I see.
I think around the age, if you were saying like age 10 or so, what I was doing a lot during the weekend and sometimes after school is rollerblade.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a lot of rollerblade, and I don't want to call it club because it's not really a club. It's kind of like a lot of parents just decided that this is really like their kids like this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So they would like meet up every weekend
Oh,
at the
nice.
I'm from Kaohsiung, so we have the Kaohsiung Fine Art Museum, and there's this little corner in the Fine Art Museum that we kind of just meet up there.
Mm.
I don't think there was any contact sign. I don't think there was like any agreement. You kind of just show up on like Friday and Saturday evenings, and then if you arrive there early, you would like have lunch with it, have dinner with everyone. If not, you kind of just have dinner at home, and then you show up, and then you just put on your rollerblades, and you kind of just the kids kind of just go off, and then the parents just sit there. I don't know what the parents were doing when we were away, but you know, for a kid, you kind of just put on your rollerblades, and then you explore the whole fine art museum
Mm-hmm.
in Kaohsiung, which is very big, and sometimes like you know you go on adventures that now you think about it, you're like it's a bit questionable, but it was really really fun, and it's like every weekend that's what I did for
Mm-hmm.
like man, it felt like forever, but now I'm thinking about it, probably like a year or two.
Oh, that sounds so fun. Could you tell me a little bit more about your friends? And like, I know you said you rollerbladed with them. So, how much time would you normally spend with them? And like, what other games would you play with them? And like, just tell me about your friendships in Taiwan as a kid.
I think that's interesting because I have school friends and then the
Mm-hmm.
rollerblade friends are separated from school
Oh,
friends,
okay.
and I never see them
Uh-huh.
outside of rollerblading because they live kind of
Oh.
all over the place in the city. Whereas if you go to school, you're all
Mm-hmm.
from like the same neighborhood. So like I remember very distinctly that when I was around 10, 11, 12, maybe not 12 because that's when I started, you know, preparing for middle school, but like maybe like 10, 11, I remember I have a group of friends at school that I only see at school, and I have a group of friends that I only see at university. So that was really fun. And I think one of the interesting thing about this group of friends is that they are people that I would never meet in school because they're from like my school is kind of like in the downtown area of
Mm-hmm.
Kaohsiung. So if I kind of just see the same people all the time. Whereas the
Mm-hmm.
world, it's like, oh, they're from the countryside or they're from like the opposite part of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like this friend group just existed outside of school and outside of like anything else. Like over the weekend, sometimes we would cook together. We'll have like a cookout when we rollerblade. So that was really fun too. And then that's just something that I was like, oh, I don't know as an adult how I can't understand how that happened, but I guess it just happened.
um, let's see. So do you still keep in touch with these friends from Taiwan?
That's a good question. I remember I knew someone who was like, oh, they're really good at rollerblading. And then his family, I think they were like siblings, their family owned like a hair salon.
Oh,
And
okay.
then I remember thinking like, oh, I never know anyone in my family that owns a hair salon. Like, I think it's a very interesting, because like, I don't think anyone in my immediate circle growing up in my school owned like hair salon. Like, they're all kind of just like, oh, they go to work.
Mm.
Like, they're not like small business owners. So I thought
Okay.
that was really interesting. Like, I think that definitely opened up my eyes up to like other opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
So, going off of that question, when you grew up, what kind of life or profession did you imagine having as an adult? Like, as a kid in Taiwan, when would you think about that? And if you did think about it, like, what would you imagine for yourself?
That's a good question. I think I didn't know how many professions there actually existed out there.
Mm-hmm.
So all like are like teachers. You know, the most common is teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think on the back of my mind, I knew that, oh, teacher is going to be a very stable job because you see them every day as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, you know, maybe like just being a teacher will be like my safety net. But I remember when I was really, really young, about like grade 1 or 2, I wanted to be like an artist, like a painter, because I really like drawing. And then later on, I was like, oh, all these artist stories I read about, they're always starving. So I decided not to be an artist anymore. So my new dream at that point was to be a writer, and I wrote a lot. Like I would make my own storybooks in elementary school. And then I think, by the time I get to middle school and high school, that turned into just like writing, like, writing in general. But in elementary school, I made these storybooks. So I was the author as well as the illustrator. So that was really fun.
Nice. Could you tell me a little bit more about your educational background and experiences in Taiwan as a kid?
Sure. I mean, I went to elementary school. I went to middle school. I went to high school in Kaohsiung. It's only for girls. So I didn't have I didn't know any guy in my high school for 3 years. After I graduated from high school, I went on a year for like a high school exchange through the Rotary. I don't know if you're aware of the program.
No, I'm not.
So I did a year of exchange in Europe as a Rotary student. And then I came back to Taiwan and I went to university in Tainan for 4 years.
Oh, nice.
And after that, I worked for a little bit, and then I came to Canada for graduate school.
Nice. Let's see. So, what would you say was your favorite food from back home, and who would prepare it for you usually?
I don't think there is one favorite because I have a lot of favorites. But I was reading an article earlier today, and it really made me crave this dessert in Taiwan that is kind of, they sell it on the street. So I don't think, like, my family don't cook it, but it's one of those things you just buy on the street. It's kind of, I think it originated in Japan, but it's kind of like, how do I describe it? It's like the inside is cakey, but the outside is crispy, and then they make it and they put either red beans or custard, or now they have more flavors. So like they could be savory as well, but it's kind of like 2 pieces of cake, and in the middle there's a little bit of a filling.
Ooh.
And then the outside is kind of crisp. So I really like that one, and I read an article about it today. So
that sounds.
But I have maybe 10 other favorite foods. Yeah.
Nice. So what would you say were your relationships like with like your extended family, like outside of the people that you would live with, I guess?
So I would say my family is pretty close because we are a mainlander-based family. So our family is pretty tiny compared to people who lived in Taiwan for maybe like more than 100 years. Like my family came over in 1949.
Oh, okay, I see.
So my family is pretty like tight. Like we don't have like all these like crazy relatives. Like what I see is what we are.
Okay.
So I would say we're pretty close. I think I'm not raised by my grandparents, but I know like it would be like my mom is the main caretaker, and then she's busy. My grandma, my paternal grandma will be watching me. So like I don't have memories, but I know like it's like, oh, okay, if my mom is really busy, I'll go this afternoon I'll stay with my grandma. Not usually overnight, but my paternal grandparents, I see them like all the time. We didn't live together, but we still I see them all the time. Like every week, the minimum we would.
Oh, nice.
And then my mom's family has more like cousins that I know of. So I know them as like my playmates because we have 6, 7 cousins. They're all girls.
Oh, nice.
So I would also see them every week. So it would be like the weekends are just like we divide time between my dad's family, which is my dad's parents, or my mom's family, which is her parents and like her siblings and my cousins. Because my dad's brother, one of them didn't have any kids, and one of them lived in the States.
Oh,
so
I see.
I don't have any cousins that I grew up with on that.
I see. So as a kid playing with your cousins, what would you say were some of like your favorite games as a kid? Like what were a lot of the most common things that you would play with your cousins?
Um, I want to say half of the time it's games that the older cousins learn from school.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know what it's all about, but they kind of just say, okay, I learned this game from school. Now we're going to play it. So I was just like, okay, I'll just go along. And the other half of the time, I think we would like invent games. So I remember there was a time that we would just like, okay, let's just do like meditation. And then whoever stops first loses. Or we would go, like we would dig up the dirt from the garden, which now I feel really bad about because it's a really nice garden in someone's condo. We dig up the garden and then we make we use the dirt to make like dirt balls. So you know how you play snowballs? We use dirt. Yeah. Super not okay now that I'm thinking about it.
That's funny.
Because we would just like, we destroy the landscape. And then I think the force of like having 6 kids is kind of scary. So it's kind of like, it doesn't really matter what we're doing, but I think our family is kind of like, okay, the kids can do what they're doing, whatever they're doing, you know, they will keep each other busy. And then we would, my grandparents, my mom's parents, they live in like a really nice condo. They have a gym and they have like a kid's playroom, whatever, but we just like destroy it. Because we would invent our game on top of that. So we would like tear apart the ceiling in the playroom, or like we would like destroy the floor. Like there was like a pool table, and then we jump on the pool table, we throw the balls around. And then the worst part is we're all girls. So people who say like girls are not destructive are wrong.
That's funny. Yeah. Sounds like you had.
I don't think we once. I'm sorry?
I said it sounds like you had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's not one game that we play. Like, we're not just sitting there playing one. It's like every weekend it's just like a hurricane of like disaster.
It's funny. Let's see. What would you say, going off of that, what would you say is one of like your favorite memories growing up?
I have a lot of memories, but since we're talking about family right now, I remember there were a lot of times that we were like, we got into trouble and then we're like, oh, we can't let our parents find out because if they find out, we'll be dead. So there are times that we're like on the outside of the edge of like a land, like those Japanese landscape pond, or like we're actually on the edge of a building on the second floor. And then my oldest cousin is like, now we're all going to jump. And then we're like, no, we're scared. And then they're like, no, if you don't jump, you can't like play with it. So we jump, and then someone would get hurt. And then we're like, oh, shoot, now we're getting into trouble. So we can't let the parents find out that we're hurt.
That's funny. That's really funny.
But now we get together and we're like, can you imagine what we did? Because some of these cousins have kids now, and they're like, we hope like the kids will not do the same thing. It's so dangerous. And then there's so many times like if you slip, you will like fall into the water and stuff, and it's like really bad. But yeah,
that's so funny.
Really scary.
Okay. Okay, so if you feel comfortable sharing, could you describe like a particularly worrisome or like challenging experience that you had from your childhood? If you're comfortable, if you're not comfortable, you don't need to answer at all.
I want to say, I think this is like, obviously there's difficulty here and there, but I think since we're talking about like just specifically about Taiwan, I would say that one of the things is that I really wish I learned, or like I was put in an environment to learn more Taiwanese, because in the south of Taiwan, I think Taiwanese is the language when they actually carry emotions more than Mandarin. So it's almost like by default, I'm like, oh, okay, if I go to a traditional market, you know, I won't understand what people are saying. And I think whenever I travel to other countries, I would be like, oh, I can actually understand people in the markets because they speak the same language as they do at home. Whereas when I'm in Taiwan, it's like, I know I have to like learn this language that's foreign to me to get to know the people that I share this space with.
I see.
Which is like very frustrating. And then it's something that I would like to work on. But I remember as a kid, you're just like frustrated. You're like, why am I not understanding the people on the street like I understand people in my family?
I see. Okay. So, in sum, what kind of feelings and words would you say would come to mind when you think about your childhood in Taiwan?
Um, I don't know. I think my childhood was pretty wholesome. I think my family really let me be a kid. I know
Mm-hmm.
some parents, I know a lot of people in Taiwan, they're not allowed to do that. They were like kind of crammed into becoming an adult, like studying and all that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think my parents were kind of like, you do whatever, like as long as your life is not in danger, you're able to do whatever you want and
Mm-hmm.
don't cause trouble for other people. So I want to say like I wholesome is pretty good. I don't know if they did it intentionally, but it's like there are a lot of times that I look back and I was like, oh, I am glad I was raised the way I was.
Nice. And what how would you say that you would like entertain yourself as a child? Like I know you said that you would play a lot of games with your cousins. Did you have any like extracurricular activities that you would take part in, like after school, any sports or anything like that?
Well, it depends on what stage you're asking because from 10 to 12, I was doing a lot of rollerblading.
Mm-hmm.
From year, like when I was like, from the time when I started to learn how to read,
Mm-hmm.
I've always been reading because how do I put it? I think my class after the first year was broken up. So I didn't know anyone going into second grade, which is kind of hard after for a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was really wasn't having a good time, and I think I was reading instead. So I read a lot, and that habit carried over to middle school to high school up until now. Like I really like reading.
Mm-hmm.
Rollerblade is something that I did from the age 10 to 11. And then in the middle school and high school, I can't remember. I think there's probably not specific like extracurricular activities
Mm-hmm.
um, in these years. I think in high school I was in a club. I was in a school club, and it's called. I don't know if you have something like this in North America, but it's kind of like how the military parade they perform
Yes.
perform with the guns or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, I did that,
Uh-huh.
but our guns weren't real.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of like it's a very like I would say it's a really unique experience because they treat you as if you're military,
Oh.
and then as much as they can for
Uh-huh.
like high school girls, and then I mean we're supposed to treat our like superior, and then like as if they are like our superior, even though they're just like 1 year older. So that was what I did in high school for like a year or two.
Nice, very nice. So let's see. One more fun question I wanted to ask you. If you could recommend one dish from your culture, what would it be?
We have a lot of food in Taiwan, so usually what I do is I'll ask them what their diet restrictions are,
Mm-hmm.
because if they're like I don't eat beef, then I can't recommend anything with beef in it. But I usually, if they're like open to anything, one thing that my go-to would be the beef noodle soup.
Yum.
Yeah, like I've literally never met anyone who doesn't like it, so
Sounds good.
it's really good. It's they cook the beef, the tenderloin, until it's like really cooked, and they put it with the noodles that are freshly made with the broth. It's really yummy.
Yum. That sounds really good. Let's see. What would you say is one dish, meal, or food that reminds you specifically of like your personal home or your childhood?
Yeah, I guess there are some things that my parents would, or my mom or my grandma would make a lot. One thing that I miss a lot living in Canada is the tofu, but it's kind of like dry tofu, because here in Canada, you can go to the Asian store, they'll have tofu, but they don't have the kind of dry tofu that I like. And also, there's not a lot of bamboo shoots here. Like, there probably is, but like, I don't want to buy and then cook and just to have a little bit, Sometimes I just feel like it. So
Yeah.
there is a meal, I think it's bamboo shoot, dry tofu with a a bit of a meat,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like basically a stir fry, but they really, it goes well with rice. It goes well with everything.
Nice.
So
Okay.
that one's good.
So I have one last question for you.
Okay.
And that is, if you could go back and tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
That's a good question. I don't know. Let me think.
Take your time.
I don't remember what I was thinking as a 10-year-old. I think I was definitely not paying attention to my surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of just like daydreaming a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I would tell them, but maybe one thing would be like there's more to the world than you see, because I think there are a lot of times that as a kid you're just like, oh, this is what I see, and then I think the universe works this way, and then you just want to remind them that it doesn't work that way. And obviously there were decisions that I made after that was based on that belief, but then that led me to who I am today.
That's
so
a good
it's
way.
hard. I don't want to break that cycle.
That's a good way to look at it. I like that answer.
Yeah, but yeah, maybe just like don't be encouraged. Like there are a lot of things that you're gonna do in the next 20 years or so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. It meant so much.
Thank
you
you.
for responding. And I really appreciated talking to you today.
Sounds good. Let me know if it ever comes of anything, and if there's anything else I can help with.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah,